future.
There are no people.
There are no people in the future.
No people at all.
There are no people in the future.
Where did all my people go?
There are no people in the future.
Let me try my people call. Where are all my people? Ah, oh. Where are all my people? I guess I'll fly away now.
Hey, everybody, welcome back. It's been a while. It's been a combination of Thanksgiving, me getting the flu, me getting behind in my work. But here we are back again. It is Friday, December 2nd, 2022. Welcome to Raging Chicken's Out to Coop podcast. This is Kevin Mahoney, creator and founder of Raging Chicken, and we've got Amy Knecht back on the show today, everybody. Whoop, whoop, whoop. And each week we break down the good, the bad, and the ugly in state and national politics. You can help support this show by becoming a patron for as little as $5 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/rcpress. And a welcome to our new Mastodon community, everybody. Yes, as part of the Twitter exodus, Raging Chicken is now on Mastodon. You can find us at Mastodon and at rcpress at union.place. That's at rcpress.union.place. If you want to go directly to the link, you could go https://, you know how that works, union.place/@rcpress. That's union.place/@rcpress. And thank you to everyone in the Mastodon community, especially the folks at union.place instance who have been awesome and welcoming, so incredibly helpful to navigate it, because as you may or may not have heard, Mastodon is a different animal, no pun intended, than the bird site. And it takes a little time getting used to and kind of figuring it out, but it's open source, community based. It's a really fascinating and really lively and very engaged community. Very happy to be over there too as well. And today is the first day that we've been able to promote this show on Mastodon. So everyone who's listening in from Mastodon today, thank you for joining us. Welcome into the Raging Chicken community, and thank you for welcoming us into yours. So you can also help out support the show by heading over to our YouTube channel if you're not there already. Smash that subscribe button, like the stream for this show, and hit that notification bell so you know every time that we go live. And hey, we can't let Paul Martino and his oligarch friends buy our schools and push extremist politics in our community. Raging Chicken has teamed up with Level Fields to launch a truly community-rooted PAC to invest in organizing, supporting local and statewide progressive candidates, and unmasking the toxic organizations injecting our communities with right-wing extremism. We're putting small dollar donations to work and beat back the power of big money. You can get more information and drop your donation at ragingchicken.levelfield.net. And this is the year, folks. Right? Midterms are passed, all the big money clears out, and now we are focused on school board elections that are coming up in 2023. This is what this PAC was designed for. This is what we need to help support our candidates now and keep the organizing go up, because we cannot forget that we've got next round of elections coming up that are going to be consequential for what happens in our school districts. So check it out, ragingchicken.levelfield.net. Now, on today's show, we got a bunch of stuff going on today. We're going to talk about the railway strike and the Democrats' debacle. We're also going to look at the largest higher ed strike in history at the University of California. Now, that is nearing an end as some tentative agreements are reached, but there are folks that are out there saying that this may kind of mark a sea change in what's happening in higher ed. We shall see. Twitter, of course, is in tatters thanks to the new right-wing, self-appointed fascist dictator of Twitter, Elon Musk, and so there's been a real kind of interesting kind of mix-up happening in the political social media scene. So we'll talk a little about that. And we'll also talk about, yes, as part of that nice little new branded Twitter, we saw the right-wing hit list start circulating on Twitter. And yes, yours truly here at RC Press, we were on that list. And you'll recall that we had Amy Knecht was on in the past to talk about the Magnolia Mothers. Well, they got a big shout out in the New York Times, I believe. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, New York Times. It's fantastic. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Remind you about what awesome work that they do. It's pretty cool. I'm losing all my places here. We're also going to dip in a little locally. Palisades teachers are still without a contract. That continues to go on. Souderton School District starting to see some anti-union campaigns. There's some like sneaky stuff that's happening there that makes me super, super skeptical. We're going to check that out. Rumor has it, well, we're probably going to see some more and more reporting on this coming up over in the Bucks County Beacon. I'm pretty sure of it. But I'm being told that there's a lot of stuff that's happening in the Souderton School District that is, quote, not good, unquote. No. And we're gearing up for some big battles ahead for higher education. It's both here in Pennsylvania with the state system of higher education, but also more broadly for the, public higher education more broadly. The UC strike, University of California strike, is one indication of what's going on there. But we're seeing waves of consolidations and schools shutting down. All under the auspices of things that we can't control that are out of our hands, which is just a bunch of nonsense, as we've talked about here. So we're going to be doing a lot on this show over the next year, really unpacking some of that stuff as the ABSCA faculty, which I am one. Our contract will expire in June 2023, and we are officially in negotiations now. So lots ahead on that. Now, for more PA Progressive Talk, tune into the Rick Smith Show's live stream at 9 p.m. Eastern on his YouTube channel, Twitter, Facebook. Subscribe to his podcast wherever you get your podcast. Head on over to thericksmithshow.com for the latest across all his platforms. And you've got to check out the Sisters of the Night Caucus podcast if you've not already. The amazing PA women stirring the political cauldron behind this podcast rock the house. And they know where the bodies are buried. Make sure to follow them on Twitter at The Night Caucus. That's at The Night Caucus on Twitter. And subscribe to their podcast at Anchor, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. And attention all you gamers out there, the Game-In, that's with two N's. The Game-In is a Quakertown-based black family-owned gaming store. They're friends of the show, and they've got everything for retro N64s, the latest consoles, video games for all platforms, collectibles, action figures, Funko Pops, walls of Funko Pops. And kids get discounts when they get A's in the report card. Come on, you can't beat it. Check them out on their Facebook page or follow them on Twitter at The Game-In with two N's. If you got a question about a game, look for something hard to get, shoot them an email or drop them a message. You can email them at thegameinpa@gmail.com. That's thegameinpa@gmail.com. A shout out, as always, goes to Jonathan Mann, who wrote our intro song, There Are No People in the Future. Check out all his great stuff on his YouTube page and follow him on Twitter at @SongADayMan. That's @SongADayMan on Twitter. And we are back for Out the Coop Live. Yes, Out the Coop Live is back too as well this coming Monday, December 5th at 7 p.m. I welcome Raylan Roberson to the show. Raylan is a field director for social media monitoring at the Common Cause. And we're going to be talking about Common Cause's programs for pushing back against waves of mis and disinformation in order to defend democracy. It's going to be a fascinating conversation. The work that they're doing there in Common Cause, it's, by marshaling kind of armies of volunteers to join in and kind of making sure that we're defending against mis and disinformation that is looking to, turn our democracy on its head. Pretty awesome work. I'm looking forward to that conversation on Monday. Now, look, if we want a progressive future, we need progressive media. Support Pull No Punches, homegrown progressive media today. Become a patron of Raging Chicken for as little as $5 a month. Just go to patreon.com/rcpress. Look, we're here for the fight, but we need you. Become a patron for the price of a good beer once a month. Help keep the media in the movement in the media. Become a patron for as little as $5 a month by heading over to patreon.com/rcpress today. But for now, I am so thrilled to be sitting here and welcoming Amy Knecht back to the show. Amy, welcome.
Thank you. Hello. It's good to be back.
Yeah, I tell you, it's been a long time, and that is mostly on me because my life has been in kind of like disarray for the most part. I'm telling you, it's my workload was crazy. I got the flu over Thanksgiving. There's like all things that are happening and kind of like in just life, the life kind of stuff that has made things crazy.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, I mean, that too. And I have been just incredibly busy. So like I don't have set days off anymore. So it makes for scheduling things a little on the difficult side.
Yeah, but today We are here, folks. Yes, we are. Yes, we are to talk about everything that is going right and going wrong. Well, maybe not everything, but we're gonna talk about some of
I think we've been here for way too long for everything.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yeah, Amy and I have had, I'm going to try to prevent this today, but Amy and I have had a habit of kind of like talking about stuff and then like, oh crap, 2 hours just went by. It's like, so we'll try not to put you through everybody through that today, but a lot of stuff going on. It would be crazy to think that we could possibly cover everything that's happening, but there's been some really significant stuff. In addition to like what I mentioned at the top of the show notes, I mean, Hakeem Jeffries has been just elected as a new House leader at the kind of a national level, which basically kind of just overlaps with what we're going to be talking about with the railroad strike and the Democrats' debacle and what this means going forward. But there's like things like that that is going on. There's all sorts of kind of leadership issues that are happening both within Pennsylvania and at the national level. We will slowly be unpacking them over the next several weeks and months and years, really. But today we're just going to kind of dip our feet back in some of the big stuff here. But where do you think we should start today, Amy? What do you want to pick up?
Oh man. All right. Let's see. I think we should start with the railway strike. That has been just, in the news the past few days. It's that and either that or Twitter. So
Let's start with the railway strike.
That
Let's
sounds
start with
good.
fighting working class and Democrats who are selling people out. It's just, spoiler alert.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it seems like it was incredibly disappointing. I knew that the administration was getting involved, with these negotiations between, the railway companies and then their unions and the workers. And it's not just like, one particular, like this is a big thing, right? Because it's not just one group of people. I do believe that there's like 10 or even more than that different.
There's 12,
yeah, there's 12 union groups.
Yep.
And the Biden administration basically decides to get involved to push through a negotiation, because if there is a strike, I mean, it is going to or it could have the possibility of affecting commerce for over the holiday season, shortages, and possibly even pushing inflation even higher than what it already is. But the way that they did it, I really felt that the Democrats definitely did the union workers dirty.
Yeah, 100%. Well, we should say, like, we expect the Republicans to do the union workers' duty, right? So that's kind of like expectation. We know that the Republicans are going to sell out workers, right? They're going to do that every single time. But to see a party, again, I mean, I don't think it's going to be a surprise to anybody who listens to this podcast that we would look at, the Democrats with kind of suspect eyes when it comes to their supposed commitment to working people. We haven't seen it kind of step up. But famously, Barack Obama promised in his campaign to put on a comfortable pair of shoes and join folks on the picket line.
Yeah.
Apparently misplaced those comfortable shoes on his first day in the White House and could never find them in his entire administration. So, you get that. That's pretty consistent in what's happened in terms of the new kind of professionalized Democrats, post 1970s. But and we should say here that the crazy thing about all this, and the reason why Congress even got involved in this, has to do with the Railway Labor Act, which is a completely separate kind of labor regime than, say, the National Labor Relations Board, and what had happened in the legalization of the union movement in like the 1930s and 40s and things like this. In part because of the massive railroad strikes that took place back in 1988 or 1888. So you have this separate regime, and because of both airlines and railways, because that they have such an impact on kind of interstate commerce and be able to move goods and people across the country, they are still kind of under this separate regime. And so there's all these kind of crazy like cooling off periods, and so this is why this has been dragging on for so long. Where they come to a tentative agreement, there's a cooling off period, and that they reject it, there's a cooling off period. And so finally here, right before the holidays, the Democrats, particularly led by Joe Biden, said, okay, we're going to use our kind of authority under the Railway Labor Act to basically to force a contract, right, between the union members and the company. Now, what should be said here, and this is kind of what Amy was talking about there, about the way they did it, they didn't have to just accept the tentative agreement that the company wanted, right? They had the ability to basically change the contract as they will. And so what they could have done is had one bill, right? And they said, yeah, okay, we'll take, Marty Walsh, the Secretary of Labor helped negotiate this contract. Mm-hmm. Okay, we're going to take what Marty Walsh wanted, and Marty Walsh kind of negotiated, but we're going to add in 7 sick days, right? Because that really was the crux of the problem, is that not only do these union workers not get paid sick days, but if they take more than a couple days because they're sick, if they miss work more than a couple days, they could be fired for it.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Definitely.
Exactly. So there we go. So we have Congress kind of takes up this legislation. Joe Biden urges them to pass this before the holidays because of all the reasons that Amy had just said. And Congress decides, or the House of Representatives under Democratic Party leadership, in its lame duck session, right, where there's very little stakes, right, where they don't have to worry about, oh, we're just about to get elected. No, they could have put in those sick days, and this is what Bernie Sanders had been arguing. This is a lot of progressives had arguing. Should have been one bill and vote that kind of up and down, and put Republicans in a really difficult position to basically say, like, oh, you're not going to agree to this agreement because why? And then you're going to send the country into chaos. No, instead they break it up into this kind of like, 2 different bills, and they kind of say, well, we put them together, but of course it gets to the Senate, and because the Democrats in the Senate don't want to get rid of the filibuster, the bill passes by 51 votes. However, it doesn't meet the 60 vote threshold, and therefore the sick days are out, but the kind of austerity agreement that the employers wanted is in. So there we have it.
Yeah. And it's not even, and like Kevin and I were discussing before the show, it wasn't even, they weren't asking for an unreasonable amount of days, because of the way that they are scheduled. It's really inconsistent. It makes it hard for them to schedule appointments or even to make just even to get to an appointment that's already made. And then, like you had said, they were being penalized for going to a previously scheduled doctor's appointment, and they ended up not being able to take off that day for whatever reason. And basically just having a set amount of these sick days, and then to have then to not give it, it's ridiculous. They weren't asking for 50. They weren't asking for unreasonable things. It really is just about a few commodities or a few benefits right there that I think we all can agree that are pretty normal, right? Like I've worked for a lot of different places, and while it hasn't been great everywhere, most of the time you get a certain amount of days that, like, allotted for sick time.
Right.
If you don't get vacation time at your job, you most of the time you accrue like PTO, paid time off, or some kind of sick time, because it does happen, and most companies recognize this. And then for the Biden administration to basically just like ignore that, not push for that even more so, and then have these senators to vote against what was it, 7 or 15, I believe it was. The administration wanted 15 originally. It was like 7 sick days. To not give them that, like, how many sick days does congressional members get?
Right.
It's absurd. Right. Completely absurd.
Exactly. And and part of what's been going on here, and let's put this in context too, is there's justifiably so. I know that. I've been involved with the labor movement for as long as I have. You know that most people are not familiar with union contracts, right? Most people don't know the kind of back and forth and all this. And because of what we're generally fed from, our kind of, mainstream news media, we keep on hearing, a crisis and all the crisis and oh God, and, companies are just not the money and blah, 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 blah. Right. Well, the thing is that the railways have basically been exercising a default kind of monopoly for quite some time. Yes, there's different companies, but those different companies, each one of those companies has a specific region that they dominate, right? So there's not a lot of places that you can go otherwise. And many of these companies have been kind of bought out by holding companies or kind of change of leadership. And what they've been basically on about a decades long, really more than that, but specifically in the past decade or so, long march of austerity, right? About kind of eliminating kind of the workforce. They eliminated something like 70,000 workers over the course of the last 10 years. That's a huge percentage of the workforce. They've been pushing for things like, okay, trains, like long distance trains, there's a requirement in a union contract that there has to be a minimum of 2 people, right, to run those trains, because you're going long distances, you're carrying heavy cargo, sometimes hazardous, and you want a second pair of eyes, right? If not for anything but just to keep everybody awake, right?
Yep.
But the company's been pushing to take that down to 1, right? And there's all that kind of stuff, eliminating kind of numbers of workers, and so they're basically operating at bare bones capacity at this point, so that workers, there's not a lot of flexibility, because if somebody takes off, right? Well, there's so few workers now. If somebody takes off because they're sick, there's a scramble to kind of get those on. And God forbid you have something like, a pandemic, right? Where people are getting sick left and right. Suddenly you have no bench, right? There's no place to go for additional workers. And so what they've been doing is, instead of saying, okay, we need to make sure our workforce is healthy and hire some more workers back, what they've been doing is saying, no, we're just going to squeeze the workers. And if you can't show up to work, right, because you're sick, what they would say, well, you're going to lose your job, and we'll replace you with somebody else who wants it. And that works very good for the companies. And they have made record profits, right? This is the story. Record profits over the past couple years, right? More so than that. But these past couple years under which this kind of contract is being negotiated, the money is there, right? It's the corporate CEOs and the kind of the stockholders, the major stockholders of their board of directors and all that stuff, who are getting huge money, right? They're the ones that the employers sought to protect, and ultimately what the Democrats helped support kind of here in Congress. So it's pretty sickening.
Yeah, I mean, and it's worth to note too is that a lot of these industries. I mean, you could say this for the railway workers. You could say this for with like healthcare workers, even, simple as like the airline industries. Before the pandemic, a lot of these industries were struggling. They were already short-staffed. They were already having problems. And then, the pandemic really just kind of exasperated, these issues that were already becoming a massive problem. And they really threw them into the spotlight. And then it just made things worse, right? So now you're starting to see a lot of pushback, from healthcare workers, from, these railway workers, from these different, working class people. And we're definitely seeing a resurgence of strikes. We've seen everything going on the past 2 years with something is like, Starbucks workers, baristas,
Yep.
Unionizing. That's not something that I think most people were expecting it to pop up in. But you have these larger industries, and you're starting to see it. I mean, even right here in Pennsylvania, the other year there was a nurses' strike at a nursing home in Montgomery County. That's not something that you see very often, at least in this portion, in healthcare in this portion of the country, right? You might think of Pennsylvania being very like pro-union, but in healthcare, not so much. And then part of what, the administration did and why they did, these workers so dirty is they really undercut the purpose of a union, right? So like if you are not getting fair wages or stuff like that, or like, sick days, something as simple as that, you're one of the tools that you have as a union is the ability to strike, right? It's the ability to shut down, whatever that commerce, whatever that industry is, because you're upset with it, and that's what the Biden administration essentially took away from these unions, right? Was their ability to do it. So if they strike now, it is illegal. Like it is an illegal move, and it has some serious consequences. And it just renders the whole process, to me, is just mute, right? Like, just why even bother having it at that point?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and I think that, look, I mean, ultimately what's got to happen is that, the union movement is going to have to get to a point where they're going to say, well, you know what, we're going to strike anyways.
Yeah.
Right. And, that, because let's remember, is like when the major unions kind of won their original contracts, whether it was teachers unions, whether it was coal miners, whether it was railway workers. They were striking and they were organizing and they were doing work stoppages, and essentially, and they were not legal, right? Strikes were not legal. We've had long, bitter fights in this country, for centuries, really, over labor, whether it's starting within slavery, right, going up to prison labor, and even just the kind of rights of working people in this country. I mean, if anybody listens to the Rick Smith show, these stories. And so at some point we have to get to that point. But the reality is, right at this moment, the union movement is one. You have a leadership in the union movement who is, again, this is changing a little bit, but the legacy unions, they are not of that militant kind of mindset. Again, that's beginning to change. And you don't have the kind of organizational solidarity that would lead to people willing to kind of walk off the jobs and put themselves in legal jeopardy. And again, all of that is understandable. This is not the fault the kind of workers in this point. It's to speak at the reality of where the labor movement is right now, which is why you have something like this where they could have just come up and said, you know what, we're going to, by they, I mean, President Biden and Congress, Democratic leadership in the House in particular, could have just come up and say, look, we're going to force the issue, right? So we put in the sick days here. And if you don't want to vote for the contract with the sick days, well, you know what? Let the workers of the company work it out on their own, like we do with other private sector strikes. Right. Mm-hmm. But the problem is, of course, they know that if the workers go on strike, right, then suddenly the public is involved. Right. Then all of us are. And yes. And the way that strikes work, if anybody's been a part of a strike, anybody been part of the labor movement, is that initially what happens, the first shock, right, is that people get mad at the workers. Right. That happens. Right, because people don't know a lot about what's happening in kind of these disputes and stuff. They only know about, oh no, my inflation. Oh no, my Christmas gifts. Right, that's what they think. But then, right, what the strike enables is for those issues then to become popularized. Right, so it becomes publicized and people start to learn about what the issues are. And when people start hearing, like, wait a minute, I'm not getting my Christmas gifts because you want railway workers to work while they're sick. And they're going to get fired if they take a day off? Are you kidding me? That's why? While you CEOs are raking in billions of dollars? Are you kidding me? Right? That's where that goes, right? That's how that narrative would proceed. And, Republicans and Democratic Party leadership apparently are not willing to take that stand. And that's a freaking shame.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because like I said, it's over something so minute. It's really not like huge issues here that still need to be hammered out or resolved. And usually, that's generally how it goes. Like the bigger issues are taken care of, but it comes down to these little nitty gritty details, and that either side doesn't want to budge on. And a lot of times, it's because the companies don't want to. They don't want to budge. They just don't want to give anymore. Right. So because what they're afraid is it's cutting into their bottom line. And they're not going to go out of business by granting, a few sick days to their workers. That's not going to happen, and you're right. These companies rake in billions of dollars. They can afford to do this if they wanted to.
If they wanted to, right? It's about will, 100%. Well, meanwhile, on the other side, so, we'll see where this ends up. I think there's going to be consequences. And the irony of this, for me, if you want to use irony as a word, is that the Democrats are so worried about their public perception, and which is why they don't want to take these risks. They have just facilitated a bunch of folks, right? 50,000 workers, for example, to not support Democrats.
Well, exactly. I mean, because if anybody saw the list of the senators that voted against this, right, you would have like people like Bernie Sanders, but then you also have some MAGA Republicans that are in there too, and that's not good because while I agree with them that they should feel that these workers should get those sick days as well, but you're basically like the Democrats are again abandoning their working class roots, right? Like they're working class party. They claim to be the party of the working class, and yet their track record has not been very good whatsoever. And so I could see why people are getting so disillusioned with Democratic Party. And I mean the Democratic Party is like, these are corporate Democrats, right? Because
Right.
they always, at the end of the day, will put, that bottom line, those profits over the health, safety, and well-being, I think, of, the American people at the end of the day. And that goes with
Yep.
any political party, just not Democrats. I mean, Republicans as well. So
100%. And I think this is what I think one of the biggest concerns for me about Hakeem Jeffries as kind of taking over the kind of leadership, Democratic leadership in the House, is that he's basically handpicked by Nancy Pelosi and that kind of that tradition of House leadership. Now, look, I want to hold out the again, it's historic. You ever have the first ever African American Speaker of the House. That's a huge deal. Number two, he is significantly younger than the octogenarians who've been running things for a long time. So that's a good thing.
that is
right?
definitely a good thing.
Right. But he definitely comes out of that kind of centrist corporate kind of wing of the Democratic Party. Now, having said that, he's not a stupid guy. And if he's been paying attention to what's going on, maybe he's got the sense of what's actually going, the tides are turning. And so there's, possibilities that Jeffries will kind of be a little bit more, lean a little bit more favorably into progressive directions. But we'll see. I'm not gonna hold out hope until I see it. For that. But my worry is that these kind of moves, especially in this kind of context, when you have union organizing is on the uptick. Right, is that and union organizing among constituencies that the Democratic Party supposedly really wants and needs, young folks, African American, Latino, immigrant women, all this kind of stuff. Okay, and now you're going to alienate them with this group. It's not very good, and you have a potential, especially in a railway, which is it's dominated by. Well, I don't know if it's dominated. I don't know the figures here, but it's a much more traditional union structure. And so, you basically alienated those folks, and you've got a bunch of kind of white union guys might be over enticed by the rhetoric that you get from the populist right.
Yeah.
So that's, none of that is good. So
No, yeah, exactly. Exactly. I'm hoping that the Biden administration can rectify some of the damage I think that they've done. I don't think they're going to do it, but this is just another reason why, for the next presidential election, I really feel that Biden should just throw in his hat and just bow out, basically. Or not throw in his hat. He should, bow out of the race. I just think that, again, it just shows how out of touch, some of these politicians really are. They're not willing to. Like, they're still conducting politics from, the 80s and 90s, and we really, really need to kill that model.
100%. 100%. Well, you have, and if you look at some of the kind of the counter examples of what's going on here, if you look what's happening at the University of California right now, you had, was it 48,000? What was it? Let me see what the numbers were exactly. I can't remember why can't I remember the number of this? I'm telling you, my brain is like a sieve these days. But, huge, historic, I want to say 48,000 for some reason just sticks out in terms of the numbers of people that are on strike. It's probably more than that, but it's the largest higher ed strike in history. And that has been, 48,000 University of California academic employees walked off the job in massive strike. That was almost 2 weeks ago. And it's been incredible, right? So you haven't seen this kind of organizing, this kind of willingness to have a militant strike than you have here. Now, right now, there's been a tentative agreement now was reached between with some of its postdoctoral scholars and academic researchers, and that is a step forward into ending the strike. That will not end the strike because there are still outstanding parts of the agreement for some of the other unions. So no agreement has been struck so far between the university system and their student employees, student researchers, which basically means that at least some employees will continue the strike. Now, there's been talks about the strike continuing until other tentative agreement has been reached with those workers too as well. We shall see. But that's, I mean, I think we're going to see that having an impact what happens in public higher ed across the state, across the country. Meanwhile, you have Starbucks workers who are negotiating their first contracts right now. You have an uptick in organizing in kind of Amazon among Amazon labor union.
Oh yeah, Amazon has been like on fire. Like they aren't giving up. Chris Smalls, if anybody's familiar with him, he has become basically a national celebrity, face of, you know, the Amazon union workers. He's really been pushing hard, and not just, you know, for where he was working, was he was originally fired, but for all, you know, Amazon workers across the country.
100%. So, you know, we got a lot of good stuff going on. On the labor front. We'll be digging into that a lot over the next several months for sure. On a whole different kind of note, in kind of corporate turnovers, well, Elon Musk has pretty much done his duty at Twitter, wouldn't you say, Amy?
Yeah, it was, so I was, it's crazy, right? So I knew that Elon Musk had, you know, proposals to buy Twitter. It was all over the news for a while, and then he was like backing out of the deal, and then some court case ensued about, you know, forcing him to do, I don't know, it was this whole big thing. And then one day I woke up and I was on Twitter, and basically Elon Musk is like, oh, you know, he's the owner now. That was it. And people were freaking out. And then it was crazy. I mean, Twitter is generally can be like a bit of a, like a swamp sometimes.
Shit show?
Yeah, it can be a bit of a shit show. But then all of a sudden you have these hard right wingers, like just, oh my God, flooding Twitter with all of their crap, saying how, you know, free speech is back and all of this kind of stuff. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And now you have like Musk reinstated the Babylon Bee, you know, which is an alt-right, you know, news organization. Yep. highly unreliable. You know,
that's an understatement.
Yeah, but he's all about this free speech. He's reinstated, you know, Donald Trump.
Yeah, he's now allowing, they're no longer banning COVID misinformation. That's
nope.
Good.
No, and because he basically is like, this is free speech. Like, it shouldn't matter whether it's right or wrong. It's still under free speech. But then, you know, he also like guts Twitter, like the company. Like, he guts it, lays off, fires, like all these people. Oh my gosh.
Well, that's ultimately who he is, right? I mean, that's, you know, I think, you know, if people have listened to the show over the years, like, you'll know is that, you know, I've Elon Musk, like what Elon Musk has done with Tesla in particular, right? And what they started doing with that company, and it's not just Elon Musk, it's the people at Tesla, right? If you want to talk about one of the most significant kind of leaps forward in electric vehicles, right? It's because of Tesla.
Yeah.
Right. It's because Tesla, like, you know, and again, you gotta, you know, you look at this, and this is kind of like the crazy world that we live in, is that we've ceded over our ability to do things to billionaires to do it at their whim. Right. Because in a sane, functioning society, we would have made decisions that would have basically invested in that kind of technologies more broadly. Right. It wouldn't take like the massive accumulation of wealth by an individual to kind of carry forth their vision. Right. To push the market forward. We could have done it in like 5 years instead of like 20.
Yeah.
Right. but nonetheless. Right. I mean, so, OK, if that's what it takes to, you know, to kickstart that stuff. And at the same time that's going on at Tesla, right, you know, designing those cars and do all this stuff, you saw the kind of the labor conditions at Tesla grow increasingly bad. Right. Because Elon Musk is a freaking dictator.
Yeah.
Right. And he doesn't give a crap about workers. He thinks everybody should be working like, you know, to teeth and bone, which is exactly what he did to Tesla. You know, you want to come back here, you better be prepared to kind of make a life commitment, you know, like you will work here and nothing else. And people are like, screw that. They're like, dude, we worked at Twitter before. Twitter was a fun place to work, and you want to come in here and make it a hellscape? No.
Well, and I don't even think so I was seeing reports like before he started firing people that he had sent out some kind of memo, and he was like demanding to see people's algorithms, their codes that they were doing, like all of this stuff in a very unusual manner. And it makes me really wonder, like, what does he really know, period, about any of this?
He doesn't know anything.
And it basically comes to that. So, you know, I started digging a little bit more into Elon Musk, and things I weren't really aware of about him before. Like, he has been hailed by the media and like different magazines and Forbes and like all of this stuff as a great innovator. He comes in, he like, he's got these amazing ideas to help the planet and this and that. And some of his ideas are pretty cool, I must admit. But like at the same point, I had no idea that this man, he's an elitist for number one, like he's never really had to work for anything in his life. It's all been pretty much given to him. And then the fact that his father is an apartheid era owning like an emerald mine in South Africa. I was just like, the mentality that this man is bringing to these companies, it makes sense now, right? Like, you can see that.
Yeah, and he's also inherited his father's belief that he needs to spread his genetic code to as many things as possible by having as many kids by as many different women as possible.
Oh, his whole so that whole reproduction thing gets me, because you see this from the far right. Like, you see this
exactly.
Is that our number one goals basically are to procreate, and for somebody who doesn't have to worry about money, I'm sure that you can have as many children as you want. You don't have to worry about it, because you can pay for it all. But having kids is expensive. Everybody knows that, right? And we all can't have 8 children, nor does every woman want to, breed that much anyway.
Well, that's why,
that's why the biggest thing that gets me with him is just the complete ridiculousness of himself, right? Is that he's like, yes, I have all these grand ideas, but like, basically you should all just be doing nothing but buying Teslas and reproducing and saying whatever you want. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, his worldview is so narrow. It's so childish. It really is.
That's exactly it. It really is like, you are like arrested at 13 years old, like a 13-year-old, like rich kid, right? With all your hormones popping and all your kind of like comic book ideas. And then you're stuck there.
Yeah.
Right. And now you've got billions of dollars where you can just kind of like reshape the world in your image. Right. Which is really sick. Yes. Emily says Quiverful. Yes. That's that movement on the right called Quiverful, which is, the idea that, every family or every woman in particular should have a quiverful of kids. That's where it comes. It's crazy. It's nuts. I thought it was a joke when I first heard about that. And then I saw this kind of like mini documentary on this quiverful movement, and then like interviews with kind of say women and men that are believe that we just need to kind of produce for the white race, and that's what we got to do.
That's like really sick. Taking Republican motherhood to the next step.
Yeah, 100%. And Musk, he thinks about himself, I think, is a little bit a different way, because like, he doesn't want to be restricted by like, having kids within marriage. That would be like, that would really be controlling of women. So he likes to have multiple kids by multiple women, some above board and some not, so he's just generous with his genetic code.
I guess.
Insane. Yeah, I guess. Right. Exactly. So we saw that, again, people probably saw this. You had the little bump up on the, the kind of little right wing kind of like hit list. They wanted, to try to appeal to Elon Musk to have a bunch of accounts banned because free speech. And of course, Raging Chicken made it on that list. I was very proud of that. So,
yeah, that one had popped out. The Bucks County Beacon was on there too.
Yep. Bucks County Beacon made it.
Yeah, and Will Bunch's column as well.
Yep. Will Bunch made it. Stephen Caruso from the who we've had on the show before. He's a reporter for the why can't I think of the name? Spotlight PA, I think is where he's at now, or did he kind of move? I think he's at that. But yeah, so you have it's like anybody who skews even partially towards being sympathetic towards someone left of Nazi was kind of like on that list. But this is what these people do. They make lists, right, and then they circulate them. And it's crazy. And they, no, Emily, we're actually not banned. We were just put on the list. We were put on a list by these kind of right wing folks that were trying to get people banned. Look, this is a familiar. There's Gwen. I'm forgetting her last name now, but she does a lot of anti-fascist work, and she was on kind of saying, hey, look, this is what these people do. They make lists, right? They make lists and they circulate them.
I saw that.
Yeah, exactly. Gwen Snyder, I think her name is. And so that's not kind of unusual, but with someone, you got a billionaire who's sympathetic to that at the top, you could see that happening, right? It's supposed to be full control, so we'll see. And Emily says, yeah, we all need to get on Mastodon. It's like, well, that's why I went over there. It's been interesting. It is not, for people who are trying to make the move over to Mastodon or some other kind of platforms, it's not like a one-to-one Twitter replacement. It really does operate on different modes, right? It's an open source, open access kind of thing. You don't have one company that controls it. You have all these kind of distributed servers that are run in most parts by volunteers or kind of either nonprofit or small businesses. The one that I joined was Union.place, which is a space for kind of union. You kind of like live or join in a neighborhood, right? But then you can communicate with people in other neighborhoods just like you can with a phone, right? It's like so there's that. Yes, there's Discord too, says Emily. Yep, there is too as well.
There are so many different platforms right now people could go to.
Yeah, it's it's a fascinating. I think this is a little bit beside the point, but this is it's a fascinating moment in rethinking what's happening in social media. And there's some for those folks who've worked in kind of indie media and things like this for quite some time, we've gotten used to these kind of platforms where that you help circulate your work. Mm-hmm. Right. And this is not just, kind of political work, but it's also, artistic work and music and all this other kind of stuff. And there's a real benefit in many ways of platforms like Facebook and for Twitter in terms of everybody's there. Right. So you have that kind of opportunity of this stuff. But when everybody's there and you're controlled by kind of narcissistic, demagogues, that's a whole different problem, especially when you have kind of algorithms starting to kind of promote mis and disinformation and all this other kinds of stuff. So this new moment, we'll see how long it lasts, but this new moment is actually it changes that up quite a bit, right? For a space like Mastodon, where you have the ethics of the way that it's organized, is really fascinating, right? Very say community-based and distributed and volunteer-oriented. Very much reminds me of some of the early internet, right? Where that was how it was organized. But the other side of it is because of it, there's not one set of rules. There's not just one set of kind of how you connect it. It's a little bit more complicated to get it kind of up and running. So, and not everybody is there. Right. So there's this, that's what's really going to be interesting about it. So we'll see.
Yeah. I think I'm going to stick with Twitter until it sinks.
Yeah. Sean Kitchen said he's going to go down with the ship.
Yeah. So. I mean, I came into the Twitter game a little bit late. It was after, Trump was off of Twitter. And that's the main reason why I had avoided it for so long, was because of him. But I really do enjoy it. And I do like the fact that you have access to so many different people, so many different organizations, and I really do think it's a bit of a shame of what Musk is doing. So
I'm hoping that there's been some interesting work being done in Mastodon communities to basically make it, people producing these independent apps or tools or things like this that allows you to kind of post in one place. And so it'll go to both Twitter and to Mastodon and some other platforms.
Oh, that's how Facebook and Instagram work. If you post something on Instagram, there's a button you can push and it has an automatic feature that it'll share to your Facebook account, right? Because it's all owned by the same people now.
Right. And there's this thing metaverse. That Cory Doctorow, who's been on this program before, and then we've been referred to his work quite a bit here. He does kind of technology. He's also got a great sci-fi writer, but he does technology advocacy and stuff. He's on the board of the Electronic Frontier Foundation and this kind of thing. But he's I'm gonna not. It's something about compatibility. I'm forgetting the technical term for it, but there's this kind of legislation that has an advocacy work around this kind of compatibility function, which would be a really important step, I think, in a direction that would be pro user, right, and not allow for the same kind of monopolistic tendencies for here. And basically, what it says is basically, if you think about like a phone, right, like a telephone, is that I can get a whole bunch of different kinds of phones, right, and I can call people that have their phone through a different company.
Yep.
Right. And it's seamless, right? I don't have to kind of do anything special to reach somebody at a number who's like from a different company. I just call the number, right? Because that's built into this. A company cannot basically block, right, a phone call or the use of this stuff from there, right? And the same idea is being discussed in terms of these reforms on these tech platforms. Basically saying, look, if you want to operate in this kind of social media field, you basically have to kind of have this open door, right, that allows one platform to talk to another platform.
Yeah.
So if I'm on Mastodon and I want to talk to my friend who's on kind of like Instagram, right, I don't need to just then hop over to Instagram. I just need to kind of call my person on Instagram, so to speak. Right. And that kind of thing, which I'm hopeful that we're going to see that kind of environment, because what that could potentially do is make it possible for smaller, say, social media kind of conglomerations, right, configurations, platforms to exist and not be kind of marginalized or set aside because they're not big enough. Because let's face it, the only reason that people go to the social media platform is because that's where people are, right? Who wants to go to a new social media platform and not have anybody to talk to, right?
Or even just trying to navigate it. Because, like,
Right.
I'll be honest, like, when I first started Twitter, like, it was confusing to me. I had never really been on it before, and I wasn't sure what to do, because I was so used to, and I'm a bit of a dinosaur with this, but I was used to, like, the MySpace platform for a while, and then, Facebook for so long, which, Facebook's there, so.
Yep. No, exactly. Well, so there you have it. So one of the things I want to definitely want to talk about. So why don't we take just a real quick break, and then when we come back, I want to talk about, you flagged this week about the Magnolia Mothers. Had a big win in a fracking case right here in Pennsylvania. And then we'll talk about some stuff happening locally in some of the school districts in higher ed. So here you go. So this is Kevin Mahoney, creator and founder of Raging Chicken. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to get into some kind of local PA fun. We'll be back right after this quick break.
Where are my people? Where are my people?
All right, cool. Do you want to start writing with the Magnolia Mothers?
Oh, yeah, we can start with them. I have the article pulled up, and then I'm going to actually pull up some of the research I had did on them the other year.
Cool.
I have to find it. I have, like, it's not this. Where is it? Did you see that the museum workers, too? They were on strike down in Philadelphia.
Yeah. They finally got their settlement.
They
That was an awesome strike.
They had Scabby the rat out there, too. I saw the big blow-up rat. It was great.
It was awesome.
Where is it? I have so many files.
I hear you that. All right, you want to go back into it? Or you want to look?
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out where the heck this thing is real quick. You can go ahead. I'm gonna find it.
All right, sounds good. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1.
Where are my people? Where are my people?
Hey everybody, welcome back. This is Kevin Mahoney, creator and founder of Raging Chicken, here once again with Amy Knecht. I want to remind you that you want to help support this show, you can head on over to patreon.com/rcpress, become a patron for as little as $5 a month. You can also help on this show by simply sharing it on your social media, right? Get the word around. If you're watching us on YouTube, listening to us on YouTube, make sure that you kind of hit the like button for this particular stream, subscribe to it, hit that notification bell so you know every time when we go live. And if you're listening to this as a podcast, make sure you leave us that 5-star review. Words of support. Let other people know why you like the show. That helps other people find the show. We appreciate it. And frankly, our social media, folks who have been such a huge part in sharing the show, getting the word out, connecting us up with other people have been just absolutely fantastic. So thank you all. So we're going to be talking about some stuff, kind of some more local stuff, some other kind of things here. But before we get to the local stuff in particular, Amy, you were on the show kind of, I think, over the summer when we were talking about the Magnolia Mothers and their work. And they got the big shout out in the New York Times this week.
They did. And it was, so it was an article. Well, first, it was an article in the New York Times in their opinion. Let me pull it up right now. Here it is. So it was a part of their Times Opinions 2002 Giving Guide. And it was by the New York Times opinion writer Jessica Gross. I believe I'm saying her last name right. And she's talking about Springboard to Opportunities. Now, this is a nonprofit organization, and it's Jackson-based. So it's in Mississippi. And basically what it does is it provides like practical support for low-income Mississippians, right? And one of the programs underneath Springboard to Opportunities that they run is the Magnolia Mothers Trust. Now, I started doing research on this a few years ago when I was doing a paper for one of my college classes. And my big focus was on basically like guaranteed and universal incomes. And the Magnolia's Mothers Trust is one of those guaranteed income programs, right? So they started out with 20 mothers. I believe it was in 2008. Was it 2018? 19, 20. It was 2018. I do believe that it had started.
Yep, 2018.
It was, yeah. And basically it was, now there's a difference between universal and guaranteed income programs. Universal, there's no string, like there's no universal based or oh my gosh. UBI, right? So it's universal.
UBI, that's why we say
income.
UBI.
Yeah. There's nothing, like it doesn't matter what color you are, what sex you are, what, your economic status, right? Like it doesn't matter. Guaranteed income usually has a little bit more, like has parameters, and the Magnolia Mothers Trust was designed to focus on some of Jackson, Mississippi's most vulnerable residents, right? So it was single Black mothers, they had, with children, basically, and living in subsidized housing. And then there was 20 of them that were in the program, and they received $1,000 for a year. And it was a huge, huge success, right? So the program branched out into the next year. They were running over COVID. I mean, they literally were able to keep families afloat during the pandemic, right? Because the thing that they needed is these women, they didn't need so much as like all of these government agencies involved in their lives telling them, oh, well, you need to work for this, or you have to come in and take drug tests to be able to get this type of benefit. There are so many rules for living in the Deep South on any type of welfare assistance down there. I mean, it is dehumanizing to absurdness. And a lot of the people that were in this program, they had an annual income of like under like $11,000 or under. I mean, I can't imagine living off of $11,000. Yeah. It's unseen. So I was, following this organization for a few years now, and just kind of keeping up with their progress. And then I saw that they on Twitter. The CEO of Springboard to Opportunities, Dr. Naisha Nyandora, she is amazing. I recommend you follow her. Everybody should follow her. But she did a shout out, that they had a piece done about them in the New York Times. So I'm really glad to see that they made some national attention. It really, really, really is an amazing company, amazing organization.
Yeah, and they have, as you've kind of highlighted before too, as well as like, these kind of programs, while, say, even when they're, say, targeted or regional or specific, are having a real impact. And it's the kind of stuff that's actually, I think, modeling the way that we can kind of really rethink and restructure how we just basically treat people, right? And what we consider to be the floor, right, for being part of a society.
Yeah,
You know.
it is. And a lot of time, the biggest thing, the reason that they do this, so it's no strings attached. So these women were getting $1,000, and there was not, they weren't being told what to do with it. It was just, and it was cash, because that's what people needed. And it was
Right.
a major success. Basically, putting to rest all of those horrible, horrible stereotypes that we have. I'm not going to name drop here, but Ronald Reagan comes to mind,
Yep.
with his whole like welfare queen and all of that nastiness that he used to spout out. But it puts to rest of that, because these women aren't going out and spending their monies on, oh my gosh, drugs and all of these terrible things. No, they're taking care of their families. They're paying off debt, right? They're going back to school. They're able to put money aside, for emergencies. It's things that we would think that everybody does, right? Because that's what they do.
Right.
And
Right.
and it really does, like I said, it just really does put to wayside some of those horrible, racial stereotyping, that we get when we hear about people who are on assistance, especially down south. And it is worth noting here that Mississippi is like one of the worst, absolute worst states to live in. They have the high, I do believe they have like some of the worst healthcare in the country, like
Yep.
number 50 or number 49. Their infrastructure is complete shit. Their infant mortality rate is through the roof. Through the roof. We live in one of the richest countries in the world. Like, no state should have infant mortality rate, period. Right? They have like no health care. It's ridiculous. And then I don't know if anybody remembers the water crisis that just happened. That was brought up in the New York Times article. So Springboard to Opportunities, was giving assistance to families in Jackson because they have no water, or their water's nasty, right? Like, it's just
Exactly.
so it's a really
Exactly.
good organization. They do, just all different types of outreach programs. It's not just regulated to one particular thing. And it says here in the article that there were 700 families affected by that water crisis, and they were giving out, direct cash to those people because that's what they needed.
Yep.
Not
remember-
food vouchers, not any of this stuff, just direct cash.
Not cultural counseling.
No, not
Right.
cultural counseling, because you think about it, and this is what these people on the right, and even some centrist Democrats, they need to remember, is that we live in a capitalistic society. Cash is king. It's the bottom line. So why wouldn't people just need that cash?
Right.
It's not
And I
that
think
complicated.
No, exactly. I remember. I wish I could remember who this was who was saying this, but I remember listening to some podcast, and there was some interview with somebody who was in the kind of universal basic income UBI kind of space, and he was talking about some kind of experiments that were happening different places in the world and stuff, and one of them was in Kenya, and one of them was all this kind of stuff. And one of the things that they said is like that say Republicans in particular, but also Democrats, have spent like billions and billions of dollars over the past like many decades, right, doing all this work on kind of monitoring what they believe are the kind of like causes of poverty, right, by providing like I say, cultural counseling or parental tips or whatever it might be, and then paying for this huge bureaucracy, right, that is about getting into people's lives to kind of like controlling their behaviors and all this other kinds of stuff. And what this guy said was, like ultimately there's a simpler solution, because, if you really ask the question about why are people poor, the more simple answer is because they don't have money. Right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you want to know what the solution is, it's to give them money. Right? And like if the goal is to solve poverty, right, and not kind of control people's bodies and minds and lives and choices, then you solve the problem in a direct route. And guess what you also do? You get rid of an entire bureaucracy that is designed to get into people's lives. Those things which people hate about government programs, right?
Yeah.
So here you go, you say, no, guess what? You're a human being. You're alive in this society. We're going to kind of make sure that you have this floor, right? So that, you can make those choices that you make. And we're out of your
Yeah.
business. And they
Yeah,
work.
yeah, they do work. I mean, and the whole issue with the welfare state, right, and this big bureaucracy that runs all of this is, first of all, it differs between state to state, right? Like, so there isn't really a whole lot of good regulation on how these, government run programs are run, basically.
Right, right.
And then, it's all based on deservedness. And that's
Yep.
what it comes down to, and this goes back generations, right? Like if you go back to the 60s, I mean, there were marches, for welfare rights, because if you were on welfare, if you were a black woman on welfare, back in the 60s, back in the 70s, you couldn't get married, because if you got married, you were like off, right? Like you had these crazy stipulations that you had to follow.
Right.
Ridiculous. It was honest to God, it was not about helping people. It was literally about controlling
Yep.
these people's lives, down to the point where, like, it became a point where, like, they couldn't afford to do anything, right? Because they
Yep.
couldn't afford to get another job, because then they made too much money, and then they were kicked off, but it wasn't enough. Like, it's absurd. I get really irritated, like, thinking, and even just, like, about any of this kind of stuff, because you look more into it, and it's not about helping people. And a lot of these
Totally.
programs don't work, right? Like the Republicans will say, oh, these, they don't work, they hemorrhage money. Well, they do, because they're not being done right. Like, they're not set up right, they're not structurally sound, and they're not designed to get people out of poverty.
Right, and it's ironically what the Republicans want you to do, right? What they want to do ultimately with these programs, either you get rid of them, right? But if they don't, if it's not get rid of them, it's to, like, make the monitoring function that much more intrusive, right? So that, which means you need more in a bureaucracy which is designed to get down into people's lives. Now, look, this is why I'm always been in favor of universal programs, right across the board. It's like, it's like, because I don't believe that, okay, you just give people money and then you get rid of all the, this is like, what libertarians want to do. Okay, we'll pay a basic income, but then we'll eliminate Social Security, we'll eliminate all this other stuff. No. You still need this stuff. Right, but the thing is, the differences between, say, instead of having Medicaid and Medicare and then all these other kind of like subsidizing things, no, you have, what do you call it? Oh, Medicare for all, right? So
Yep.
everybody gets Medicare, everybody gets health care, right? And so therefore you eliminate all this kind of like means testing nonsense, right? And then you basically, okay, then you take that off the table, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's what, most of every other kind of like country that can afford it in the world, that's what they do for exactly the same reason. But
Yeah. I mean,
here
and it
we are.
doesn't solve like all poverty issues either, right? Like, just
Right.
because you live, and then that's what, and it's really, I say it's not a complicated issue, but I mean, it is when you're talking about like a national, like when you're doing it like on a national level, right? But like you just, if you see the way it is now, it doesn't work. And if we were to slowly chip away at some of these problems, and there have been studies going back to the 50s, back to the 30s, about why people are poor, and they always come back with the same thing, right? It's always the same thing, because being poor in this country is a policy choice. Not to quote Nina Turner there or anything, but it is.
It is.
Poverty is policy.
Yep. 100%. 100%. Well, on the other kind of another thing happening kind of more in PA that you flagged this week is that we had a big win when it comes to communities basically standing up and fighting back, basically saying, no, we're going to make a different kind of policy choice, right? We don't want kind of live in a polluted and kind of messed up kind of environment.
Yeah. Hold on, I am pulling that back up. I lost my article.
Yeah, so I mean,
what town did you say it was in? Dimmock? It was Dimmock.
In Dimmock, PA. Yeah. So you remember, like the for folks who've watched Gasland, right? That awesome show, awesome documentary by Josh Fox, right? Where Dimmock, PA, was kind of front and center as the fracked community whose water you could set on fire, right? The water coming in their houses, you had so much methane in it and was polluted with so many kind of carcinogens and all this other kinds of stuff. They became, in a sense, like a poster child, not wanting it, not in a glorious way, but in a horrible way, for the downfalls of fracking and the fight against it. And we've just had a huge kind of win this week exactly on that.
Yeah. So WHYY, like NPR covered this, PBS, like all these different local news outlets covered this. The Bucks County Beacon did as well. So basically, so after 15 years of having this polluted water, Cabot Oil and Gas pleaded no contest to 15 criminal charges, including 9 felonies. And this is the first time that Cabot is taking responsibility for basically destroying the drinking water there in Dimmock. It was, let's see, they agreed to pay $16.29 million to Pennsylvania American Water to build a public water system. And then here's the kicker on this too. So the company is going, well, it says that there's a pledge. So we'll see if they hold out for this. But the pledge is that the company is going to cover the water bills for the affected residents of Dimmock for 75 years. 75 years. So I really hope that they're going to be held to that, because it does say it was a pledge. So I don't believe that was court ordered. But yeah, like, so I haven't seen the Gasland. I mean, Kevin had just told me about this today. I'm totally going to take a look into it, but basically, having a win here. I mean, people are familiar with the Flint water crisis, the crisis that we had just talked about, the water crisis down in Jackson, Mississippi. And it seems like so often that this stuff gets news coverage, it gets a lot of press and stuff like that, and then it fades out, and then you don't hear anything about it after that, right? Like, I'm pretty sure Flint, Michigan still doesn't have clean water,
Yep.
So to hear of a win, for the people of any of these crises is amazing. But the fact that it took 15 years, I mean, people were living in this town for 15 years with water that could, you could light it on fire.
Yeah. It's crazy. And I think,
That's insane. That is
it's
insane.
It's and kind of like having to kind of like deal with kind of like carcinogens in the water, like, I mean, some of the words. And the thing that's interesting about this case, not just, interesting is like a disinterested word, but what's amazing about this is that the Cabot pled like to criminal cases, criminal charges. So it wasn't just like they were, we didn't know, and oh my God, we need to make it right. It means they knew. Right?
Yeah.
They knew this stuff was going on, and they took an active part in kind of doing it, and now are being forced here. Now, for my money, the amount of damage this that company has caused, not just in Dimmock, but across Pennsylvania and across the country, $16 million is like a drop in the bucket for what these people are taking in.
Yeah.
So, going forward, especially as, we need to make a switch to kind of non-fossil fuels, that I'm hoping that this settlement in Dimmock is actually going to be like the shot across the bow and saying, okay, no more, get out of jail free cards. We're going to start putting the clamps on.
Yeah, because the governor-elect Josh Shapiro, he was the Attorney General of Pennsylvania, and he had it says here in a WHYY, a PBS article, it says here that he had charged them, the Cabot Oil and Gas Company, in June in 2020, after recommendations from a grand jury that found the company had failed to acknowledge and correct conduct that polluted Pennsylvania, so not just Dimmock water, like Pennsylvania water, through stray grass migration. And then they have an interview here with a resident who basically was like, this gentleman, it was Ray Kemble of Dimmock, who says he continues to haul water to his house in large containers. He said it's a vindication for the people who suffered from lack of water and Cabot's denials of responsibility. He said they're not going to be able to sit there and do what they did here for 14 years. He said all they did was deny and saying that the residents of Dimmock were liars. That the water wasn't polluted. He says they're finally going to be held accountable. And that accountability right there, I do think that the monetary amount should probably be more than that. But like just having that accountability, in a court case and a win like this, I'm hoping that this kind of sparks off, some revised interest in some of these other places as well, especially in, places like Flint, Michigan.
100%. And, this is, I want to put in a plug in too for the great folks out in the Public Herald, based out of, not just out of Pittsburgh, but the folks out of Pittsburgh in particular. We've had, them on the show here, Josh Brabanek, and they do great work, especially on kind of pollution and fracking and fossil fuel stuff out there. So do check out the folks at Public Herald too as well, who they just do amazing work on this. So great stuff. So let's talk teachers' contracts and unions a little bit here. So now you flagged this, I think probably the last time you were on the show. And you've been kind of following, goes up here. Obviously, you talked about, being up in Palisades School District, and you've got teachers up there that are still going to work, still teaching kids, but are still without a contract. So where are things at?
Well, pretty much things are where they were like in July. So if anybody's familiar with Upper Bucks County or the Palisades School District, if you're traveling up along Route 611, 412, anything like that, you might notice that there are these large signs up, and basically stating that Palisades teachers have been working without a contract since July. In addition to that, they also, before the contract had expired, they had agreed to extend the contract a year before, to help with budgetary issues with the district. It's not a large district, right? Like, we don't rake in millions and millions and millions of dollars like Central Bucks or some of our neighboring districts. So the money, it's not inexhaustible, but at the same point, there's no reason that, we're starting to hemorrhage teachers up here. And this used to be a good district. Now, I still feel that it is a pretty decent school district for the most part. We are not plagued with a lot of the same issues that you're seeing in our neighboring districts, like Quakertown, Penridge, Council Rock, Central Bucks especially, which we do border. But the sheer fact of like that there's no budging. I did an op-ed for the Bucks County Beacon of this the other month, talking about it. I managed to get a statement, from the co-president of the Palisades Education Association, and basically, they don't want to, it all comes down to pay, right? So Palisades School District is one of the lowest paid districts in Bucks County. And I get it, it's small, but there's no reason why you can't be providing adequate funding, for the teachers' pay, right? Like, I don't really want to get into too many details, but I do frequent the school board meetings. The regular school board meetings are held like twice a month. The next one is on Monday at 7 p.m. If anybody wants to show up and speak about it, I am going to be there and probably going to be bringing up as well that these teachers still don't have a contract. I know of several in the district that are planning on leaving. We're going to be leaving really good. We're going to be losing our staff, and we're not going to be a blue ribbon district anymore. People come to this district, they move up here because they like the area, because they like the school district. I, for one, decided to move up to this area because of the school district, right? It came highly rated. I'm not really so sure about that now, and I don't really know what to do. Like, it's everybody's hush hush, right? Like, I can't really there's no commentary coming from board members, probably because they're not allowed to speak on the matters, which I totally understand, but at every board meeting, you're just getting, well, things aren't moving along. No news is good news. It's just, there's nothing. Like, so for how long are our teachers going to put up with this? And if they're not going to strike because they can't afford to, right, they're just going to leave. And then where are we going to be?
And this is right, and this is happening against a backdrop of and every major newspaper in the state is talking about the teachers crisis and not being able to kind of recruit enough teachers. And this is not just happening just in Pennsylvania, but it's happening in states across the country. And so again, you're just it's like adding more fuel to that crisis, right? If you're not going to actually do the things that are necessary to keep good teachers.
Yeah, and that's what it is, and like I said, I understand that we're a small district. I understand that, you do have a finite amount of funds at your disposal, but at the same point, like, there were some purchases this year that the district made that, like, I was a little shocked about. Like, do we really need a new digital sign in front of the high school? I know part of it was funded by a separate organization, which is fabulous, so it wasn't, the whole cost didn't fall upon the district. That's great. But at the same point, like, what's more important, that digital sign out front or retaining our teachers? Right. And I don't know how the negotiations are going. I'm not sitting in on those meetings. I'm not invited, obviously. But I can't imagine that they won't be budging at all on some of the pay. I mean, to be one of the lowest paid districts, obviously, in the current climate that we are living, you would think that administration would want to take that into consideration, right? Like, we're going through really unprecedented times. Our teachers, were made to work through a pandemic, and this is also important to note, right? Is that Palisades teachers, we were probably the first district that went back to face-to-face classes when all the other districts around here, were not. And a lot of our teachers, they don't have children that go to our district, right? So, because they might not live in the district. So they had to contend with their own children being at home, doing online learning while they have to be face to face in the classroom. So there's a lot of these other factors that were like put onto our teachers. And again, we don't have a huge staff like Central Bucks. So the teachers as well have limited resources.
Right.
It's not just it's not just administration and, the monetary funds. It really has to do with other things as well. I am really getting disappointed. I can't believe that they are still going this long without any type of resolution.
Well, you know something, you brought a couple times about how, there's not like unlimited funds in the district and everything like that.
Yeah.
Totally understandable. But you know what? What I have found in my experience, like working in, I grew up with a family of educators, right? Been around teachers for quite some time. I'm still a teacher, right? In higher ed and stuff like this. But what I can tell you is that, the people who understand that quite often are very much the teachers themselves,
Yeah.
right? I mean, teachers are very conscious of like what kind of funds are available in the schools. That's why there are so many teachers who end up kind of bringing their own materials or are paying out of pocket expenses to kind of make sure their kids have adequate supplies, right? I mean, teachers don't kind of go into education to become millionaires, right? They come in there because they love teaching, but they
Yeah.
also have to live, right? And, I have yet to meet a teacher who just kind of says like, I don't care how much money the school district has. I just want lots of money. I have never heard that out of a teacher's mouth. The only reason, and matter of fact, teachers have more often than not are willing to take pay cuts, right?
Yeah.
Or are willing to kind of have freeze on benefits and things like this because they're worried about, the integrity or the funding of the school as a whole. So when you have the point where teachers are you're finding a sticking point like this, like we're not talking about, like people who are out there to make $1 million. Those are people like Elon Musk, right? Those are those people. It's not the teachers in those school districts. So it's like, you have very often, the teachers are aligned with the parents and the taxpayers and all this kind of stuff for the most part, right? It's when you have these school boards who think that, the teachers are the enemy as opposed to kind of like, how do we kind of make sure that we're all kind of going to be in this together? We're going to keep the talent that we need.
Yeah, and I actually, and for the most part, like I have approved pretty much of our school board, right? Like I think our school board does a pretty good job for the most, they do. I think they're reasonable. I think the people, for the most part, that have been elected to the board, are easy to talk to. I think that they really do want to make, the best decisions, for our teachers and for our students as well. But like I said, the last school board meeting I went to, there's a committee now that reports on the negotiations, and the committee director or the committee chair or whoever is in it, it's one of the board members, and he doesn't have anything to say. It's just like the last time at the last board meeting, he said, well, no news is good news, I guess. Like, what kind of relation, like, what is that? That's not accepting. Like, I just don't feel that that's acceptable. I am concerned. Like, how is the integrity of my child's education going to be faring after this? And like I said, I don't really see our teachers going on a strike up here. I just don't see it happening. They're just going to leave. They're going to go someplace else that's willing to pay more, that wants these really good teachers. So it is very concerning. It is very concerning. And to me, it's even more concerning is the lack of public support. Like, I haven't seen a whole lot of people at board meetings protesting. One or two here or there. The teachers have showed up themselves. The one meeting they were all dressed in black in solidarity. They had elected, a representative to speak on their behalf, as a collective whole. And she, was really powerful words, but that's it. I mean, the teachers can be there and advocate for themselves, but where is the rest of that public support?
Yep, 100%. And one of the things that I've been saying, and through the school board wars that have been taking place in this kind of area, and like you said, like you don't have up in Palisades, you don't have a school board which is kind of as off their rockers like we do here in Penridge, or in kind of in Central Bucks.
Oh my God, no! And I'm just
Yeah.
going to put that out there right now.
Yep.
We don't, and I am so very grateful for that, because I can't even imagine what you are dealing with in Penridge, and people that I know that live in Central Bucks. Like, I don't even want to go there with that. That's just
Yep.
awful. And like I said, grateful for a school board like that. But at the same point, I do wish that they were perhaps be maybe a little bit more transparent about what is going on.
Yep.
Maybe put out a press release or something. Like it's
Right.
always, everything is so hush hush up here, all behind these closed doors. It's just all this like talking on the side, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, well, and I do think that this is one things that I've again I've had these kind of debates and discussions with my own union, and there's been we've had these arguments about the like how much we talk about negotiations and all this other kinds of stuff, and there's this one model where everything is kind of like nobody says anything and it's all behind closed doors, and I understand that for the most part when negotiations begin, but when there's a breakdown, right, or when there's real things, then look, I mean, people got to start speaking out. I mean, this is where PSEA really, I think, needs to think about how it's doing its organizing, right, and what teachers moving forward. Now, like for example, in Penridge, one of the things that's been like fascinating to see now is that there were two big moves by the school district over the past several months. One was the kind of their move to eliminate some health classes like gym classes and things like this, and now they want to kind of cut social studies classes, right? And for the first time,
Such a bad decision.
well, totally, for a whole bunch of reasons, but for the first time, what's been happening is that teachers are now showing up en masse to school board meetings and speaking publicly about this. There was just I don't know if I'm going to have I don't know if I have this. I did have this handy. It was right by me the other day. Let me see if I still got this. I don't have it right next to me right now. Shoot. But I wanted to give you the kind of the number of them, but I don't have it right here. But there was I want to say like 20 some odd Penridge social studies teachers signed on to an open letter that was published in the Courier Times, right, or the Intelligencer, one or the other. So writing a public editorial and kind of showing up at these school board meetings, kind of in defending the social studies curriculum. That's the kind of thing that I really, really like to see, and I think we need to see more, especially because look, when you have lots of pressure that is coming from a particular more conservative kind of bent stuff, or really kind of mainstream media too as well, when everything is focused on financial districts and greedy teachers, right, how it's all about the kind of the bottom line dollar, when half the time what you find out is that yes, there's always dollar issues that are there, but sometimes one of the real sticking points are not necessarily the final money. Or kind of benefits or whatever it might be. So at some point you got to start having these kind of more public conversations because the community is involved, right?
Yeah.
And the media structure is set up, and the kind of the public discourse about kind of finances and taxation and everything like this is all working against any kind of, say, public education, any kind of public service whatsoever. So you have to engage with the community over kind of these issues. And I think that keeping everything quiet and behind closed doors is going to be increasingly detrimental for teachers. So, and one of the things I've said, in the wake of those school board wars, that the next target is going to be teachers and teachers unions. That's where things are going, and I think that, and I'm not saying that's happening at Palisades like you. I don't know the backstory here, but people, we need to be supporting these teachers in Palisades.
Oh, I think so. Just like I think we need to be supportive of the teachers, all the teachers in Bucks County. I mean, like Palisades has its issues with different things. Every school district does. But they have some pretty good curriculum too. It's not. I just don't like I said, and I don't know, I mean, you can go to the fiscal meetings, you can go to finance stuff, and you can, it's all public record. I mean, you can look up and see how much the district is bringing in and this and that and what they spend on, it's not, that information is all there, I mean, and I do believe that teacher salaries are public to some degree.
They're all public. Yeah.
Yeah, but so all that is there, but again, I've watched our district spend money on some of these other things, and I'm not saying that perhaps they didn't need them, and I'm not talking about roof projects or anything like that,
right,
but housing for storage and stuff like that, and that really cool digital sign that they got for the front of the high school. I just feel that those things really should be taking a back burner.
Yeah.
So, but I can't
100%.
imagine for right there, for what you had said with Penridge though, with them taking away the social, that's going to affect colleges, is it not? When students are
Yep.
applying for college.
Yep. Yep. I want to get somebody to come on and talk. I reached out kind of a while back. I'm gonna have to do another round of this to see if I get some of these social studies teachers to come on and talk about what's the impact of the curriculum and so on. Because I
That would be
like that.
fabulous. Yeah.
I mean, that would be, that's one of the things I've always hoped. I've always hoped to have, not just kind of some spokespeople that are going to come and kind of give me the kind of line that they're getting to anything, but just talk to some teachers about what these kind of impacts are, and to help kind of get the voices of the people on the ground, right? Kind of out there talking about what's happening. So one other thing that we're going to flag, and I think that we're going to see some reporting on this coming in the upcoming months, but there's some issues brewing down in Souderton School District too as well. And I've had some people reach out to me from some parents groups of Souderton over the past several months, just kind of little blips in that, building kind of some networks of connection, trying to figure out what's happening there. But there's this kind of was sent to me there, but there's this organization, quote unquote, new organization called SoudertonTeachersCoalition.org. Now what they claim to be is they claim to want a local only teachers union, right? And they want to vote basically for the decertification of the Souderton Souderton Education Association, which is again a branch of the PSEA. They want to vote to decertify PSEA and bring in a local only union. Now, why does this matter? Well, what's always kind of interesting when you go to a website and when they have say, hey, contact us, and then when you contact us, there's no information about who they are, right? Or kind of what names are associated with it. But it's just kind of like about us, or here's this kind of standard contact fill out form. You got to ask the question, who's behind it? In most cases, when you see moves like this, right, especially the Souderton just settled a union contract this past summer. Okay. And in Souderton's, I'm going to give you kind of an example. See if I can pull this up real quick. I just had it. What did I do with it? Here we go. So Souderton signed a contract, right, that July 1st, 2022, which went into effect, and it goes to 2027. And it was approved by the area school board, right, at the meeting. Now, just for an example, starting salaries are going to increase by about 12% over the life of the contract, while the top salary will be increasing by about 5.75%. The new contract raised the salary schedule by $750 in the first year, $825 in the second year, and $1,050 in the third year, $1,700 in the fourth year, right? So it tells you what goes on, tells you what the starting salaries are. And, they say there are statements that came out from both. It says, hey, we are very pleased to achieve this agreement between our school board and our teachers association. This is the result of a collaborative process which honors the hard work and dedication of our educators and also acknowledging the burdens placed on local taxpayers. Now that is happening. So that went into effect. And now there's also been, you may have seen this already, there's this video that is circulating on the Libs of TikTok site, which is this kind of ultra right-wing stuff about this this Souderton, this quote-unquote Souderton woman who has actually gone to a school board meeting and talks about how teachers kind of like forced or coaxed her daughter to be trans. Then they shaved her head and changed their name without notifying the parents. Now, first of all,
the teacher shaved the child's head.
That's what she says. This quote-unquote mom, right? And now the Penridge Area Republican Club, this is what they said, and they tweeted out, tragic. Souderton teachers overstepped their mandate. Teachers are hired by parents to educate their children, not to indoctrinate them. Clearly, some teachers have a savior complex, right? So that's coming from the Penridge Area Republican Club. We're seeing this kind of anti-trans stuff that has been was used in the midterm elections that will be going forward. You've got this woman kind of like, this going viral on, this was kind of just was published out on November 16th. So just a recent school board meeting. And now you've got this organization called Souderton Teachers Coalition that is going after the teachers union. Right. So my money is on the fact that all of that's connected. Okay. So look, just keep your eyes on Souderton School District. I know we haven't talked a lot about Souderton on this program. We've been focusing a lot on what's happening in Central Bucks and Penridge and Palisades, in part because that was where a lot of activity was happening, let's say the least. But we need to start talking more about what's happening at Souderton too as well, to see that this is a pattern. And it's going to be setting up the next fight for 2023.
Yeah.
So, Last thing I want to say on the education front, I'm not going to talk a whole lot about this today, but I just want to put this on everybody's radar because we're going to be talking a lot about it coming up. So there's going to be some big battles for Pennsylvania public higher ed and public higher ed across the country that is going to be happening. As I've said, that the ABSCUF contract, that is the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculties, that is my faculty union. Kutztown is one of the members of it. We have seen unprecedented kind of activity there. Like, for example, we had consolidations of 6 universities into 2 as part of the 14-state school system. Lots of people losing their jobs, curriculum being cut, a whole bunch of kind of negative stuff that's going on at the statewide level. And I think it's going to really... it's setting everything up for an incredibly contentious contract negotiation. So those contract negotiations had just begun. We're going to be hearing more about this, and it's going to be playing itself out in the budget talks too as well. That having said that, there's also a series of articles. Vox just posted one about the coming demographic crisis when it comes to public higher education. And it highlights Shippensburg University, which is a member of the state system of higher education universities, as an example, right, of what's happening in terms of these crashing numbers of students and all this other kind of stuff. What's interesting to me about this article, and first of all, I should say this article from Vox, thank you, Colleen Clemens, for flagging it for me. Again, yes, it was a really crazy article to read. The article was written by a guy by the name of Kevin Carey, and he writes about education and other issues. He's the vice president of New America, which is a think tank in Washington, D.C. Okay? So why I flagged that is because, okay, there's a think tank that's writing about this kind of stuff, and a think tank is generally an interested party in some regard. Right. I don't know a whole lot about these folks. We'll be looking into them. But the basic overall narrative is that there's a coming demographic crisis, and that's going to kind of like dramatically change what happens to public higher education. The elite universities are going to be fine. It's the state universities or regional universities that are going to be impact hard. And part of the conclusion is that is going to lead to a further disparity when it comes to access to public higher education, and is actually going to lead to a further kind of separation or kind of self-selection of kind of Democrats and Republicans in different areas of the country. But anyways, so that's one of them. A second article that came out too as well this week was an article in the Chronicle of Higher Education, basically exploring the different kind of solutions to this coming economic crisis. And there's these public-private partnerships. There's this kind of like, quote unquote, innovative. And anytime you start talking about innovation, that my ears go up, because usually that's kind of flagship for austerity, downsizing, and job loss. But so there's this stuff that's going on. And I think this is all happening for a reason right now. The state system of higher education's chancellor's name is Daniel Goldstein. He, again, as I've said before on this program, he came out of the Gates Foundation's higher education program, which was all about the kind of like, like assessment and, innovation as a way of kind of transforming higher education, all these kind of buzzwords, which ultimately leads to, again, downsizing, job loss, cuts of programs. Which independent studies have shown exactly what that is what's happening in Pennsylvania. So, but the language is bleeding into a bunch of articles in different kinds of spaces, which tells me this is in the air, right? When it comes to when people are talking about public higher education and there's money behind it. So we're going to see some of that stuff play out kind of in higher ed. One of the things that is always interesting is that the numbers that are getting used in this, the article in the Chronicle, and I believe in Vox's article too as well, they talk about a peak enrollment in 2010, which is when the enrollment numbers went way up, and then they have a dramatic drop off, right? And so we're seeing, so the numbers that we say, look at the amount of students that have left the state system. So you have, look, enrollment at this one university was 8,000 in 2010, and now it's down to 5,000. Right. And it reproduces this model of crisis. Right. And what's been called cliff funding. Right. That we're about to fall off the cliff. So what are we going to do? Here's the problem is that as Jamie Martin, who's the former our previous ABSCUF president, went to the Board of Governors and made this case over and over and over again, for the most part to deaf ears, was that it's interesting that they pick 2010, and Daniel Goldstein has chosen 2010 as the number to show the decline. Because if you add on 10 years to that analysis, right, you basically take that point, that data point at 2010, you draw it back 10 years to 2000, right? And you look at enrollment trends there, what you see is not a model of decline, right? But you see a pretty steady, consistent, gradual increase over time with a bump at 2010 and then going back to more normal levels, right? That was predictable. People talked about it at the time that there's going to be a demographic bump and it's going to go down. But now that demographic bump is being used to demonstrate that look at what it was and now it's fallen. So therefore, it's a self-justifying narrative to try to cut, right? So that's kind of where we're at. And that's all I really want to kind of say for now to kind of set that up a little bit for future shows. Because I think that we're going to have to basically be foregrounding this both in our kind of contract negotiations and union organizing, but push back against this this particular kind of narrative, because what's ultimately happening is they're kind of getting rid of access for public higher education for massive amounts of students. That is happening at the same time that we still see debt loads at an all-time high. And so we didn't talk quite about the crazy Supreme Court decision. Now they're going to hear the student loan forgiveness program for the Biden administration. So everything is still on hold there.
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh, I totally forgot about that. I didn't forget about it, but I did. So I hope people who are eligible out there filled out their applications for it, because I think it's an amazing thing to be going through.
Yep.
It really is. I mean, I myself, I totally put in my application for it. I just got done school. I have acquired a bit of a debt there, so it would be nice to have some of that knocked off, because that literally will reduce the amount of years that I will be paying on my student loans, and I'm going to be adding to that too, for higher, getting into higher education. So I really do hope that the Supreme Court, sides with the Biden administration on something like that. I think it would be just a really big blow to a lot of Americans, and just basically telling them that, we don't care about you.
Yep, exactly. So it's going to be like, and again, so we'll see, I hope that the Democrats go hard on this, because I think it's going to be kind of important. Setting up for both one, support for the program, right, for the cancellation of $10,000 up to $20,000 worth of debt, depending on how your debt was incurred, but then to also set it up for, if the Republican Supreme Court and Republicans go out kind of against this and this gets shot down, everybody and their grandmothers and their future children should know the reason why.
Yeah.
Right. And that should be a mobilization kind of moment, a political mobilization moment around that. So we shall see.
Yep.
Crazy. Well, hey, Amy, anything else for the good of the order that's on your mind?
I'm trying to think. There's always so much going on. It just really depends on where you're looking. I don't really think so. I mean, have you been keeping up with any of the series shows?
Well, this is what I was going to say, right? So I was like, I have, right? So, but I have not watched Wednesday yet. Have you watched Wednesday?
Oh, well, we actually binged Wednesday over Thanksgiving. So
yeah, if I wasn't, I swear to God, I had
fabulous. It was really good.
I can't wait. I cannot wait to watch it. I got the flu, and I tried to watch some program. I couldn't even pay attention because my brain was such a fuzz. So I was like, I'm not watching Wednesday in that context. So I haven't gotten that yet. I did watch what's it called? Andor. Have you watched Andor?
Oh, yes. I do. Okay, so I think I have an episode. So here's the thing. I am on the last episode of Andor, right? I still haven't finished that last episode, nor have I finished the very last episode of House of Dragon yet.
Oh my God, you have to.
I know.
You have to.
I've gotten through halfway through the episode. I keep falling asleep, right? And I'm not bored by it. I'm just tired. So it's those two series I really do need to finish the last two episodes of.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that so I didn't spoil it for you because
I
it's
know.
like so good.
Well, it's getting to be that point now where it's like if I don't watch the end of it soon, it's just I might as well just find out what happens. But I'm
Yep,
very
yep, yep.
excited for both of those. I really did like Andor. I think it started off a little slow, but I
Yeah,
think it's really this is the most that I think that we've ever been, unless you've read the books, right? So I haven't read Star Wars books, but if you
no,
have
neither
been
have I.
involved in like the Star Wars world, the most that we've gotten about how like the beginning of the rebellion basically has started and more of the like inner workings of it, right? Like in the beginning, before Luke, before Leia, before all that.
Yep. Yep. I loved Andor. I absolutely loved Andor. And I'm a big fan of, not making things as simplistic, right? And Andor made things complicated, right? And there
Yeah.
wasn't just like they took that kind of heroic narrative that the original Star Wars movies were so much a part of, right? It was about
Yeah.
this here's this good versus evil kind of thing, and it put it in a much more kind of gritty context and much more complex and problematic,
Real.
which is great. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
loved
and
it
I think it really put it into more of like a real setting, right? Like
totally.
you could sympathize with, I don't know I can't remember what planet it is, but the planet that Cassian lives on, right? With
Yep.
his mother or his adoptive mother, the workers there. Like, you know what I mean? Just something as simple as that and showing solidarity with the community against the empire, the way that
Yep.
sorry, spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't
No.
seen it. But the way that they announce to the whole community when you have like Imperial troopers coming through. You know what
Yep.
I mean? Like
Yep.
you're just like, oh, I could see that happening. Like communities do that today
Yep. Yep,
with
100%. So
stuff. So
I was thrilled. The other thing that I was a little bit bummed about. It looks like they put off the launch of the next season of Wheel of Time
oh,
until
that's a
like
shame.
January or something.
Yeah,
When
that's
is
a
it? June?
shame.
Did you say?
No, I said that's a shame.
Oh, I thought you said June because
No,
I was like, no, don't tell me June. I can't wait that long.
no.
But
I
they were
don't know when
teasing
it's
it
coming
for
out.
yeah, they were teasing it for November, right? So that was it was like, okay, great, 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 November and
Mm.
blah 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 blah. What's happening? Why is it not coming out? And it looks like it's not going to be until after Christmas now. So, and who knows, right? There's not a date launch because I am so looking forward to the next season.
I am too. I really enjoyed that one as well. I think a lot of these series have been doing pretty good. I haven't really disliked any of them so far. So
Oh, I know the other one I had to ask you. Have you watched oh god, I'm gonna forget the name of it. That's awful. The oh god, oh god, it's been getting all sorts of really good play. Oh shoot, what the heck's it called? I think it's on HBO. I want to keep on say the replacements, but it's not the replacements. It's oh my
mm.
god.
I
Let me
do
see if I
not
can
believe
find
I
this.
have seen it.
Yeah, it's like it's called the let me see if I can find it real quick. Um I read the book and had no idea this was ever going to be put I'm not going to remember. I can't. It's the peripheral. The
Oh,
peripheral. That's the name of it.
no, I have not. I have not seen
It's
that.
I'm about 4 episodes into that, and it's a William Gibson book, I believe. It's one of his more kind of recent books, and it's I'll tell you, reading it. I remember people have likened it back to one of his earlier books in Neuromancer, and I could totally see why. Because I remember in that original book, when I kind of read some of like his stuff, his early sci-fi, it was like and like trying to wrap my head around what's actually happening, right? Because it just felt so, you know, like there's all these virtual things that are going on, and the peripheral kind of has some elements of that, and it's there's like this time travel component into this. It's this kind of like virtual reality. It's this, it's kind of this like post, not apocalyptic, but post crash, and I think it takes place like in West Virginia, which makes it even that much more interesting, right? So it's like it's a really, and what I've seen so far, I'm really really liking the series. So that's another one.
Yeah, I don't.
Oh, cool.
No, well, now that you're explaining it, I don't know if I saw an episode or not. I'd have to go back and look at it.
Yeah, it's let me see. Yep, there it is. Let me see where it is. It is on Amazon. It's Amazon. It's not it's not HBO.
Yeah.
So,
Oh,
but,
okay.
yeah,
I
it's
saw
pretty
this
cool.
stuff. Yeah, no, I have not seen it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Anyways, so we shall see. All right, well, I'm in the trying to keep my promise of not making us go over 2 hours.
No, that's fine. I have a lot to do today.
Yeah, ditto right here too as well. But well, hey, I'm so glad that you're able to come back on today. It's always kind of a much better Friday when you're on. So
Aw, thank you.
look forward to the next time that we can do this again.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'll keep you updated and let you know what Fridays I have available.
Sounds good. And I know that Cyril and I have been trying to kind of get back another time that we can make this happen. So that's the end of my semester. Hopefully when the semester ends up, we're going to have Cyril back on and we're going to do some updates from the Beacon because they've been turning it up over there too as well.
Oh, yes, they have. Awesome. I do enjoy the Wednesday show.
Yep. Me too. All right, everybody. This is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder, creator and founder of Raging Chicken. I want to remind you can help support this show by heading on over to patreon.com/rcpress. You become a patron for as little as $5 a month. And look, if you're watching this on YouTube or you're listening on the podcast, make sure you like this show. Make sure you share it out with friends and leave us a review. That's how other people find the show. That's how other people can kind of join into this amazing community. And again, a shout out to all the amazing folks over on Mastodon who were incredibly welcoming and helped me get my feet on the ground over there at Union Place. So anyways, this is Kevin Mahoney, creator and founder of Raging Chicken. Amy, great talking to you. We'll talk to you soon.
See ya. Bye.
All right. See you, everybody. We are out of here. We'll see you Monday. Yes, we're going to be talking about misinformation and how to fight it. Monday, Out to Coop Live, 7 p.m. We'll see you then. All right, everybody. See ya!
Where are my people? Where are my people? I guess I'll fly away.